All right. So we're here. And we talk about on this podcast real estate, doing investments, doing real estate sales. And, my next guest does some real estate investing. So I want to talk to you about what you guys are doing today. So bring us up to speed. I usually have every guest bring us up to speed on where they're at, where they came from, and how they became, successful in the niche that they're doing.
Oh, okay. Where we are currently, we are operating a residential assisted living facility, also called a group home for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And we provide 24-hour residential nursing care, which is like a huge leap from where we came from, which was house hacking to Airbnb hosts, um, the real estate investor world of, your fix and flips, rehabs, to now operating a full fledged medical facility, essentially.
So you go from house hacking, and how many deals were you doing when you're doing house hacking?
Not many. From house hacking, it was our primary home was the house hack, and then each year we would buy a new home, split it into 2 units, and then rent those out as short-term rentals as well. So before we transitioned over to the residential assisted living model, we had about 10 units at that time.
Gotcha. Okay. And that just was a slow grind, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
Every year or so you'd buy one, lower down payment. Would you guys do 3.5, 5% down and then refinance if it's an FHA and do a conventional and then, do it on the next? Is that kind of what the business model that you guys worked with?
Not really. I wish I was that smart. When I started, I didn't know anything about investing yet. So I did conventional loans and put down at, 10%, which I could have benefited from that lower interest rate and putting less money down, but I didn't have that knowledge at the time. So, but yes, after that, as I started to learn about being a real estate investor, future properties, it was still always that 10% down, but I was implementing the BRRRR strategy where I would fix up the house and refinance it or put a home equity line on it to access cash to do another deal.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's still, doing the conventional and being able to have that, HELOC or cash out propels you quicker versus, just buying one, saving up some cash, because saving up some cash could be depending on how the income works with your family, it could take 4 or 5 years to make that happen. But you guys are
Right.
doing it pretty significantly, which is, huge when it comes to propelling you forward quicker and more successfully, along that path and, the 5 to 10 years that you're doing it. So how long ago did you start doing house hacks?
We purchased the first house hack in 2016. We moved into that
Okay.
one. And it wasn't until 2019 that we decided we would, dive into real estate investing. So, and from 2019 on, we probably bought a house or two a year after that before switching to residential assisted living now.
Oh, nice. Okay. And what made you guys, I'm going to say, see the light or, adjust to assisted living?
So Airbnb is great. It was awesome. It is far better in terms of cash flow and like maintaining the integrity of the property than your traditional 12-month lease. Unfortunately, Airbnb, everybody loves to hate it, all short-term rental models. So
Yeah.
your regulations in the cities are constantly changing. We're in an area now where they added regulations after we'd started. And so it was no longer something that we could operate without
Hmm.
having to physically live in the property. And by this point, our portfolio had grown, and there's no way we could live in all of these properties. Um,
Yeah.
but the homes were really good. We did a lot of extensive rehab on them, so it was a solid property, and selling them was not something that we thought was the best next step. So I was looking for an opportunity to maximize the existing homes we had in our portfolio versus
Hmm.
looking to continuously grow the portfolio. And that's when I came upon the residential assisted living model.
Where were all your short-term rentals?
In Orlando, but not like
Yeah.
Disney Orlando, in the
Yeah.
actual city of Orlando.
Okay, so Orlando's getting. I mean, I'm in California. LA is, you got to live there, and then if you have an ADU or a, granny flat on the backside, you can rent that out as a short-term rental. But they've basically cracked down on everything, and then a ton of different cities around. So,
That's
so
the
as
same
they started,
regulations in the city of Orlando now. Yeah,
got it. Okay, so as they start adjusting, this is when you pivot and go towards, the assisted living model. Okay,
absolutely.
and And so did you guys have any type of, coaching to get you, and because I feel like, and we can go in the nuts and bolts of it, but I feel like there's a lot more on the back end of, speaking of regulation, getting licenses, getting everything like that into place to get that up and running. So talk a little bit about that, because that seems like it could be very good cash flow, but at the same time, there's a lot of barriers of entry.
There are barriers, but the barriers look taller in the distance than they are when you get right up to them. And it's just like tedious. So there's a ton of paperwork. There's an extensive application process, a lot of documents they require, getting liability insurance, putting together proof of financial ability to operate, which, your budget. So there are a lot of components to it, but each of them are doable. So if you were pacing yourself and like just took your time to put that together, it could get done. But it's a long game. So let's say the
Okay.
total application process for me before I received my agency was about 4 to 6 months,
Okay.
and then the process of licensing the first facility was maybe only 1 to 2 months. So
Got it.
it's
Okay.
more tedious than impossible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just you know, there's a lot of processes to go into it to get you, to the next. So you guys do this. I mean, is it in Orlando? Is this where you guys have the facility? Okay.
Yes. So we essentially
And
took the Airbnb property, we selected one of them and chose to convert that. So most people, when they're stepping into residential assisted living, they would buy a home first and then start this process of getting licensed to be able to operate within the home, which could be
mhm.
pretty costly because you're carrying costs during that time because it could take longer,
Yeah.
can really add up. So for us, by moving from Airbnb to assisted living, we were able to continue running our Airbnb business so that we weren't like, racking up debt to do this
Yeah.
conversion. And we waited until about 3 days before the patient was due to arrive before we shut down Airbnb to convert the home over for assisted living.
Gotcha. Okay. And how does it look on a month-to-month basis with expenses, especially being, I would assume, multiple attendants in there, nurses. So what does that look like on the expense side and making sure that they're sticking to the requirements? So do you guys have, I'll let you answer that. I got another follow-up question though.
Okay, so expense wise, you still have the expense of the home, which is whatever your monthly mortgage was, your utilities, those were the same carrying costs you had when you were operating an Airbnb if you're coming from that. So that's flat. In terms of staff, the amount of staff you need is dictated by the number of patients in the house. So, quite honestly, when
Mhm.
you start, if you only had one patient, you only need one person at a time in the house with them. So let's say that's 14 shifts a week. We do 12-hour
Okay.
shifts, so that's one person in the morning, one person at night, 7 days a week. So that's 14 shifts, but you can cover all 14 shifts with 3 to 4 people because they're each doing 12s and
Okay.
roughly 3 12-hour shifts a week. It depends on what your staff is comprised of. If they're a certified nursing assistant or a licensed nurse practitioner or an RM, that's going to dictate what your staffing costs would be. For us, we did all of our estimates on a model that mixed half and half CNAs and LPNs, with one
Hmm.
RN overseeing all of them. And we estimated that our expenses would be about $33,000 a month, and that includes utilities.
Okay. Okay. So you have these expenses, including obviously the mortgage. So you have these expenses. Once you shut off the Airbnb, these expenses go into place right away. How many beds do you guys have? Or how
We
many
have five
people stay?
beds.
5 beds. Okay.
5 beds.
Eh, Okay. And how much are you getting off per bed?
So that also depends on the type of patient that you bring into the home, and it can vary. For us, we look for 24-hour nursing required and total care.
Okay.
Um, and with that, that is just over 18,000 per month per person.
Okay.
And we can have up to 5 patients in the home.
Gotcha. Okay. So you guys have 5 now?
We don't
Or
have 5 now, I wish.
okay.
But
Okay.
that's gonna be at max. But if you compare the numbers, that 33,000 that you're paying within the first 1.5 patients,
Hmm.
you are now profitable. And so
Yes.
your math might be faster than mine. 3 patients at $18,000 a month is what you have after you've covered all of your costs.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's significantly good
And
cash
that's
flow.
And that's specifically for the type of home I have. Now, many people open assisted living and they're doing um, rehab homes or transitional homes, or they're doing behavioral clients. So it depends. Those numbers are specifically for 24-hour nursing care.
Okay. Okay. Um, and is there any other liability that you guys? Is there any other type of insurance that you guys pay for specifically, and what type of insurance is that? Because I could
E-
see that that would obviously, um, there would be some issues that could arise that when the normal general liability insurance and stuff like that, that's not going to cover.
Yeah, so it would be a commercial general liability policy.
Okay, got it. And is there any other like riders or anything like that written in there because you guys are, a different business than let's say a real estate office?
It's the what would you call it? The liability provider. You have ones that are specific to medical or residential settings, facilities that would provide that insurance. So the carrier is what's different, not necessarily an additional rider.
Okay. And then how are you guys getting the patients? Is that um, a lead, I guess you could say, from a hospital, or is that word of mouth? How does that work as you guys grow that
And again,
facility?
this is for like us specifically with
Yeah.
where we are. We are in the state of Florida, so we're licensed by a Florida governing body. And
Hmm.
so they have their own referral system. So you would
Got it.
receive an email with different referrals coming from that system. In addition to that, we do a lot of networking. So there are what you call waiver support coordinators, think social workers in other settings
Yeah. Yeah.
that have clients that they're looking for placement for. So we do a lot of email blasts out to all of the waiver support coordinators in the Central Florida area. We network with other medical professionals, people in hospitals, as some clientele could be there. So we get calls occasionally from hospitals with referrals for patients that are looking for placement. You can find a referral just about anywhere. I think last week I ran into a young lady that works for Nurse Next Door, and
Hmm.
she is currently providing services to a client that now needs home placement. So, primarily waiver support coordinators within the agency that you are licensed with. But as scrappy as you can get with networking and just letting everybody know what you're doing and that the home is available, you can get additional referrals that way too.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I asked you, on the spot there is just because I've never thought about, how people are coming into the facility. Uh, and is there, um, I would assume that the house, once it's converted from that short-term rental, are there other things that you need to do ADA wise to get the house prepped for people staying there? Because it's kind of a commercial will, if you will, like a ramp and a couple other things?
Yeah, so now we're getting back into that initial licensing process. So that during that 6 months of going through my application, as a part of that application, one of the visits or inspections you have are from the fire marshal to come in to take a look at your smoke alarm or fire sprinkler system if you have one, or to determine whether or not you actually need that. Um, and then they give you a report and sign off. There is an application you would do to the city to get the house rezoned to be able to operate this type of commercial business within a residential home. So all of those things would be a part of your initial application process that you're going through. Then when
Hmm.
you get to licensing the specific facility, those inspections happen again. So for us, because our clients are totally bed bound, we had to install a fire alarm, full house sprinkler system because they couldn't get themselves out of the home fast enough
Hmm.
in the case of a fire. Um, there are ramps. So we have ramps at each doorway to get in. There are grab bars in the shower, but then also additional equipment you would use, like having a shower chair or a Hoyer lift to help patients get in and out of bed.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, um, all that stuff makes sense, especially when you're walking into these homes. Have so what's the next step after you get the beds placed, five of them in there? What's the next goal for you guys? Are you guys gonna expand on this once you build up that amount of cash to go put down on another house to do it again?
Well, not even put down. We're just converting the homes in our current portfolio
Got it.
because
Okay.
now this new model outperforms our current rental model. So
For sure.
we'll just move around the corner to the next house and convert that one.
Nice. And is there how many homes right now do you guys have in your portfolio?
We have 3 in Orlando and 2 in Miami.
Okay, got it. So you're looking timeline wise to build all the rest of those out, maybe the next 2 to 3 years, or do you think that that's going to be quicker?
I think that's fair. We're not necessarily in a rush because, again, like to go from real estate to a medical facility, it's a pretty big leap. So for me, I would want us to take our time. We're definitely not going to exceed 3 patients before October of this year. That will give us plenty of time to like hone in on our policies and routines and just understand the system that we're now operating in. I think once we get past that point, the expansion will be as fast as there are patients that can fill the beds and staff that can be hired to provide the services. So I think within 2 years, we should be moving on to the second property by that point. But a lot of it is dictated by, the clientele if there are clients that are looking for placement. So that we can't really control the timeline of.
Yeah. What are some pitfalls that you guys have run into just starting this process from, being short-term rental operators to now, a facility operator?
The absolute lack of information out there about this. Like, no amount of Googling was helpful in any way, especially for the particular segment that I'm in with residential nursing. There's just so much unknown about it. So you got to have a lot of time on your hands to do like that legwork, the research, to figure out what the process is about, how to build, what to do. Like they're not going to train you or hold your hand or teach you what to do. They will give you the application and you can figure out how to fill that out. And then they'll say, here are the things that we're going to look for when we come to inspect the house for the license. And then you have to figure that out. And then they're going to drop a body off to your house and walk away. And you have to figure out the rest of it. So there's no guidebook to what you should do or how you should do it.
And you haven't ran into, and you're pretty much answering the question, but I just want to see, like, you haven't ran into anybody that's like been super successful at this model and been able to, find them either online or, in your local market to kind of, tailor after.
Yeah, so there are 2 different organizations within my local market that I'm modeling after. The
Okay.
issue is you can model from afar. You can see what they're doing and piece it together, but it is not as collaborative of an environment as you would like. So it's not like you can just walk up, call them and be like, "Hey, can you help me with my application or tell me how to do XYZ?" Because they're busy
Mm,
running their businesses.
yeah.
So there is no time to hold your hand through it. You're going to be on your own with that. And when you can interact with them or at least get a glimpse of what they're doing, you have to be smart enough to put it together and try to duplicate it with all you did was pass by the house. You got to say hi to somebody and see something, walk in one time, and you better had paid enough attention to be able to go back and try to translate that into actual action steps for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, a lot of people like someone in your shoes where ultimately they become, very successful in one niche is because, they do have a faraway mentor that kind of guides them a little bit here and there, but that ultimately takes that one step further and is successful in their own business and venture. Um,
I wish I had that. I would love that. Like if I had a mentor with real estate investing, with Airbnb, and with this, I maybe I would have gotten so much further, so much faster. Unfortunately, it appears that my path is to figure it out on my own. So I've gotten really good at seeing something once or just, taking a little bit of information and then building from that. So not yet. I will say that I am still hopeful that, I will find a mentor in this to help us continue to build out this model. But so far, it's, let's say if I get 5 minutes of a conversation with someone, that's enough to like, okay, I'm good for the next year. Let me just build onto that.
Okay. Well, when you were saying that there are some players in your market, I thought maybe that was like the 5 to 20 minute conversation of the
No.
mentorship. That no, nothing like
Mm-mm.
that.
There's still one I'm trying to get though. I email her regularly, like, "Hey, I'm trying to model my business after yours. If you ever have some time," but I may not ever be able to have that conversation. But that's to me is not a barrier. Like, there's enough you can figure out from looking at how her company is registered online, what agencies she's with, what accreditations they have to be like, okay, all this seems important. Let me research each of those things individually and try to put that story together.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, so at least that's good. So you guys have a small foundation to get to, being successful. So okay, so you're building this, and you're obviously taking this left turn from short term rentals. What would you say has been your, lead indicator of the success you've had thus far, through the short-term rentals that you built? You don't have 50 of them, but you had 5, and you're able to build those up and now you've pivoted to where you're now being more and more successful at this niche.
I don't know. Uh, can you phrase that question another way?
Yeah, so like is there something that throughout your life has put you on a path and then when that path seemed not just for you, just change course? Is there something in you or is there, something that you have found to be a innate trait?
I definitely think so. It's the other half of the story, jack of all trades, master of none. And that used to be a weight that was like, I love to dabble in a bunch of different things. Sometimes people say that's shiny object syndrome, and I would never spend too much time on any one thing because I would split on to the next. But that's just how my interests naturally progressed. But then a couple years ago, I heard the other half of that quote, jack of all trades, master of none, but still better than a master of one. And I was like, who knew, right? Like this is how I've always operated, just following my interests. And when I wasn't interested anymore, moving on to something else. And I thought that was a bad thing because everybody would tell you to pick one thing, focus on that, become an expert on that, and then expand from there. But I couldn't operate that way.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's just some people are naturally wired to want to do multiple things at once. And so to the outside world, it might seem like chasing the shiny object, and that might be true for some people. But for others, that is how we are wired. We're motivated by learning new or more. And so shiny object syndrome is not necessarily a bad thing. So I think that's just, I didn't get to choose it. Like I came wired that way. And starting in corporate America, where like that doesn't actually work. You need to
Yeah.
focus on one thing and become the expert of that, and you get pigeonholed in like a particular career track. If you realize that about yourself and the environment you're in is not helping you foster that I call a special talent, then it's imperative that you put yourself in a position to be able to just operate from your natural inclinations versus trying to fit a mold.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you got to be a little bit different to be able to, stick out amongst the pack, from corporate to doing what you're doing now to gather the information to like you're being gritty about it. You're being able to gather the information with, not like a massive bigger pockets, this is what we're focused on. That's the same thing as I got a buddy that does he does laundromats, and he kind of started a website for it, but he really never found any information about laundromats because that type of industry is kind of like what you're talking about. Is no one's really out there speaking about it or talking about it. More and more people now in the last, I would say, a couple of years are talking about laundromats, but they really held all the information pretty close to the chest. So you're like, well, I got nothing on this, but you were able to say, okay, well, I got nothing on this, but let's reposition and get to another place. And because you were running into these barriers of short-term rental legality issues and laws, so you made you made the best of what you could do, which is
Yeah, I
huge.
mean, we didn't have anything on house hacking when we started it. But you figure it out as you're doing it. We didn't know anything about Airbnb when we started it, but it was the next closest thing to pivot from house hacking into real estate investing. So I think all of it is a natural progression and it all connects in one way. So as you're being scrappy and learning all of these things, being able to pivot to something else successfully become it becomes a superpower, because a lot of people will start something and be like, well, I have to do this one thing this way, and they would spend so much time trying to force something to fit that just doesn't. It's okay to drop something and move on to something else. I know that's the opposite of what people tell you your whole life, but if it's not working, move on to something else that does, and it's easier to move on if you look and find something like, that's kind of connected, so the transition could be easier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, that transition, just like you said, like there could be something that, and maybe you're more passionate about that than what you were doing before. You just didn't know until you made that switch. So
Right.
yeah, I really like that, and how you put it is because something you may stumble into ultimately is going to be that better right fit for you. So as you let's talk about, so you work corporate for a while.
Mhm.
Okay, so when was the last time you're like, okay, this is it for me? Was there?
Yeah, it was when I got fired in August of 2020. It was like,
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know.
okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I got my first firing happened, what was it? 2016, maybe like fall of 2016. I got fired, but within the organization there were other branches of the company, and in the same day I got offered another role in another branch. So I never had to actually leave, but that was like the okay, this situation has too much control over what my life would look like, because at that point I had just finished the rehab, so I had no cash, no savings, and if I didn't get that other offer, I would have been scrambling to figure out how I was going to sustain myself.
Yeah.
And that was probably the all right, I never want to be in this position again. I will never be in a position where a company could make a decision and flip my entire life upside down. So from that point on, it was full steam ahead on real estate investing, trying to eliminate my expenses and generate enough passive income to survive off of so I didn't need a job. So by the time 2020 rolled around, I had been on it. So
You're
the
right. Yeah.
firing was more like, thanks. I mean, y'all, I was planning to leave at the end of that year anyway,
Okay.
but there was no impact. Like my life didn't have to change. I had already built out my portfolio. I was already deep into Airbnb. So that didn't matter. I did go into another job like within a month of that, just because, I've never not had one. So that
Yeah.
whole not getting a check every 2 weeks thing is still scary, even
Yeah.
if you have passive income and savings, you're still comfortable with biweekly checks. But the job that I took, I wanted it to be more related to like the things I was moving towards. So I went to work for a contractor as a project manager. And I did that for about 5 months. But while doing that, I get to watch him every day
Hmm.
be an entrepreneur and live out his dream and explore the things that he's interested in. And I'm like, that's what I really should be doing. So after
Yeah.
about 5 months, I was like, hey, thank you, but I'm just gonna jump out and see if I can make my own way.
Yeah.
Um, and then 3 months after I left him is when I purchased the property that is now the group home.
Gotcha. Um, so was there when you're in corporate before that 2016 layoff, did you have any aspirations about like leaving, going to do something else, or yeah, okay. All right.
Absolutely. I never wanted like that was never the plan. The goal was to be an entrepreneur, just do something else. Like day one, all my life, I never intended to work for anybody. But by my last semester of college, I had student loans.
Yeah, yeah.
So I took a job and I was like, okay, I'm going to work. I'm going to do this 2-year training program, pay off these student loans, and then I'm going to chase a dream. Right. So I do that. I've spent my first 2 years of my career being super diligent about my finances. I pay off all my student loans in those 2 years.
Nice.
Then I'm like, okay, cool. I'm debt free. I can chase a dream now. But I paid off all my debt, so I don't have any money. So I was like, all right, let me get home to family. And then I got to save. So I did one more year. Like, all right, I'm going to put all my money in the bank. And then I'll have enough money to live off for a year, and then I can run and chase a dream. So I do that. I move in with my parents, sell all my stuff, and put all but $400 a month in savings. So by the end of the year, I had nearly an entire salary in the bank. It was dream chasing time.
Yeah.
But now I kind of like the location they moved me to, and I've made friends with the employees there. It's perky. We have company events in the suites, and we're courtside at basketball games. And so those golden handcuffs started to set in,
Yeah.
and I no longer knew what I wanted to do if I wasn't at work. So now I'd bought in, like, all right, well, the corporate career is working. I don't really know what business I want to start. Let me just see where this goes. But a few promotions after that, it's just like you start to remember yourself
Hmm.
and be like, wait a minute, this isn't what I was supposed to be doing. You look up, 8 years have passed, and you're wondering how you got there.
Yeah.
So at that realization, it's okay. How did I get here, and where is it that I actually want to be? And ultimately, I wanted more freedom.
Hmm.
And the only way I was going to get that, because throughout this time, I had started a bunch of side businesses and none of them really took. And entrepreneurship, it's not that fun.
Yeah.
So what I wanted
Yeah.
was I wanted freedom. So I've started focusing on being a freedompreneur, like what do I do to free up my time? That's where house hacking came into. If I didn't have my biggest expense, which is your living expense, I don't really need money the same way, which changes whether or not I need it to work. So, okay, boom, let's get rid of all my expenses. That's what house hacking did. Now it's like, all right, I do need some cash, but I don't want to go to work every day. So, what can I do to have cash monthly without me trading my time for it? And that's where the focus from real estate investing came from. So, all of this really was just a natural progression of trying to figure out what type of lifestyle I wanted to live, what would make me happy, and then what components I had to put together to bring that life to reality.
Okay. What's up with this? I saw your email and it's fearless and free. So is that, it sounds like you're kind of resonating in what this is. So is this something completely different or is this the company that you guys run right now? What?
So it's not the company name, that's just the social media facing. And
Okay.
Fearless and Free Fi, and the FI is for financial independence.
Okay.
It is all encompassing. It's basically just chronicling the journey, the story of what's happening right now, and it's all things. It's the way I budget and manage my money. It is being an Airbnb superhost ambassador and operating that business. It's being a real estate investor. It's learning to travel hack and traveling the world for free. So it's basically just my lifestyle. This is what freedompreneurship looks like. This is what living fearlessly looks like. And all of that is connected to financial independence being the foundation for being able to live that life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, Well, I could see like as we transition talking about, corporate and then, you wanting to eventually be, an entrepreneur and that was always the goal, running through certain things that was the model in your mind. So that's why I could see transitioning that way and, free and fearless, being able to, go through life, being financially independent and doing what you want to do. What are some takeaways from that? Like, as you've grown the past couple of years, like what are some things that you're like you look back and say like, hey, I should have done this or I should have done that. Granted, you're here, talking to me and you've created this good life for yourself, but are there some other takeaways that you had the past, you know, 7, 8 years?
Um, I think you can always look back and find something that you could do better or different. I think every rehab, there's like a whole list of things that I would have rather had or would have done different with the new knowledge that I have. But I don't dwell on those things because all of it is learning, right? Like you're always going to be learning. Nothing is ever going to be done perfectly. And you will always look back at something with new knowledge and know something else that you could have done. So I don't worry
Hmm.
about that at all. What I do try to focus on is daily, like always being aligned with what my values are and what's truly important. And it's not money or how much money I could make. It's the time that I have to explore my interests or spend time with my friends, the time that I can spend to take care of myself and my health and wellness, contributing to the people around me by sharing the things that I've learned or helping when I can, and I don't know, enjoying the birds when I walk around outside. It's like the simple stuff. So that becomes a focus. Like I don't want to get swept up in the constant drive for more, scale, build, make more money, because ultimately if what I want is freedom, all of those things are trappings that would take away from that time freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're running a big team, and even if you put process in a place, it's still taken away from that ability to be free. And, you have somewhat of handcuffs, speaking of golden handcuffs, you have handcuffs, to your team to make sure that they perform and they get to the next level. So, um, okay. Well, so I have a couple last like questions at the tail end of the interview. One is there a book that you've read that's helped you get to where you're at today? Anything. You
Okay, I
laugh.
like this is the last podcast I'm going to be on where I can't answer that question. Um, I don't read any of the real estate books. I only read for entertainment. So I'll read fiction and things like that, but I haven't read any business or real estate books.
Okay.
But
What about this?
I
What about
educate
a?
myself
Okay.
via podcasts.
I was just going to ask
Podcasts,
what your.
internet research.
Okay. What's your favorite podcast? That was my next question. If the book didn't work out.
Okay, favorite podcast is Impact Theory by Tom Bilyeu. So that's more of the motivational mindset aspect. Um, I also like, what was the other one? Lewis Howes. I can't think of the name of his podcast off the
Small
top of my
greatness.
head, but yes. So most of those, that's mindset And that helps me stay in a space to continue to move forward, that whole fearless aspect of it all, being true to yourself. When it comes to the podcast I use for like money management, real estate investing, obviously Bigger Pockets. They're a whole suite of podcasts. Bigger Pockets Money was where I started, and that helped me hone in on like my financial planning and budget to achieve that financial independence. And then Bigger Pockets Real Estate, of course. So I think between those four, if you look at my, podcast list right now, those are the episodes that are coming on there.
Nice. Yeah, I just heard Tom speak at a conference I went to a couple months ago, which was cool. And then Lewis House was like signing books one day down in San Diego, and I went down there. This was a long time ago. This was like 8 years ago, and I met him. It was pretty cool. Those guys are
But I also
both
have
doing.
to add that my latest edition, of course, is my financial freedom journey. So before you start, I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
That has been added to the list.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And what about a app or online resource that you use to be more efficient in the business?
Listen, this whole thing has just been winging it for the most part.
Winging it,
So,
shooting from the hip.
because the assisted living model is so much more nuanced, I'm just now having to implement softwares and things for better
Okay.
efficiency. And the first one that I had to do was Gusto for payroll, because
Yep.
now I need to have payroll and HR software to support leading a staff. Before that, when you're running Airbnb, the Airbnb app is the majority of what you're using in addition to VRBO and any other sites. I think we also added what is the what did we add? Guesty to help
Okay.
manage all of the rentals
Heard
at
of
once
Guesty.
for that. We started using Price Labs to help optimize our
Okay.
pricing strategy. Um, and that was it for short term rental, using smart locks and the apps that go with that.
Yep.
But now it feels like the assisted living becomes more of a business because you have government regulation,
Yeah.
you have to build to Medicaid, and so that just requires a little bit more, but still not as much as you would expect. So there's a charting software for our daily operations called Therap, and then Gusto for HR.
Okay.
And so far, that's all we're using so far.
Okay. All right. I mean, look at you said you had none, and then you gave me a lot. So 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 you had some. Okay.
Well, that's
So
all within the last like year.
you had that though. You had them. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you especially sharing your story. I liked how we dove into, corporate life and what that gave you, the inspiration, even though you always had it there to get out of it. Even though it probably wasn't nice at the time of being fired, but that fueled the fire to be able to be in the position you're at now, which is awesome. Where can people find out more about you?
They can follow me on Instagram at Fearless and Free FI. And then that's also our website, fearlessandfreefi.com. We are in the process of wrapping up the episodes. So we recorded from day one of the group home opening, just like everything that went on from the first
Mm-hmm.
patient move in to our first inspection, paperwork, just sharing all the things that I wish I had the answers to when I walked into this. So that YouTube show will be coming out this summer.
Nice.
Hopefully, it's informational. So you can find us at Fearless and Free Fi on YouTube as well.
Look at that. You guys are going to be like the bigger pockets of assisted living,
I hope so. Let's see what happens.
Well, cool. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it. This has been, insightful, especially, growing something that was a little small to getting to the next step and then, here to the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.